The abandonment hook, the desert, was silent. No trees, no rivers, no sign of life, only endless sand and sharp black rocks. The sun was burning, and the ground looked like fire. In the middle of this wasteland, an alien woman lay on the sand. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes glowing faint blue. Her clothes were torn, her body weak. She was not sleeping. She was not resting. She was dying. Above her, 3 vultures circled slowly, their wings cutting the hot air. Their eyes were hungry, waiting for her final breath. Each time she moved even a little, they moved closer, ready to strike. Her lips trembled. She tried to call for help, but no sound came. Her family had left her here, alone, abandoned. She remembered the moment they pushed her away. Her own mother's face cold, her father's voice hard. "You are cursed. You will bring shame." That was all they said before they turned their backs. Her people walked away, never looking back. Their shapes grew smaller and smaller until the desert swallowed them. Her heart broke, but her body could not even cry. She had no strength for tears. She only lay there, listening to her shallow breaths and the slow beating of her heart. The vultures dropped lower. One bird landed on a rock, not far from her. Its head tilted, eyes fixed on her flesh. She could feel death waiting. But then, footsteps, soft at first, then louder. Someone was walking across the desert. Someone who was not a bird, not a beast. She tried to lift her head, but it was heavy like stone. Through blurred vision, she saw a figure. Tall, moving slowly but steady. The sun behind him made his face hard to see. Was he real, or only a dream before death? The figure came closer. The vultures hissed and flapped their wings, flying away in anger. It was a man. A human. He stopped a few steps away and stared at her. He had never seen a being like her before. Her silver skin, her glowing eyes, her strange clothes, she was not of this world. For a long moment, he did not move. His heart said help her, but his mind whispered she could be dangerous. The alien woman's lips moved. She tried to speak, but only a broken sound came out, weak like the wind. The man saw her pain. He saw her hand shaking, reaching for something she did not have. His chest grew heavy. He bent down and slowly took a small metal bottle from his bag. He opened it and held it near her lips. Water at first, she hesitated. Was it poison? A trick? But her body was too weak to doubt. She let the drops touch her tongue. Cool, pure life. She drank slowly at first, then faster. Her eyes opened wider. Color returned to her face. She looked at him not with anger, not with fear, but with something else. Hope. The man said nothing. He only watched her. She did not understand his words, and he did not understand hers. Yet in that silence, something passed between them. A fragile connection. But the desert was not safe. The vultures had not gone far. They circled again in the distance, waiting. And there were other dangers. The desert had eyes, and shadows were already moving in the rocks. The human looked around. He knew they could not stay here. She needed shelter, and he could not leave her. He made a choice. Without another thought, he lifted her gently in his arms. She was light, almost weightless, as if her bones were hollow. The alien woman closed her eyes again, not from weakness this time, but from trust. She did not know why this human had stopped. She did not know why he cared. But for the first time since her family abandoned her, she did not feel alone. The man walked into the desert carrying her, his shadow long in the dying sun. Behind them, the vultures screamed, angry that their meal had been stolen. The desert watched. The story had just begun. The first encounter, the cave, was dark, but safer than the desert. Small rocks formed walls, and the cool air hid them from the burning sun outside. The human laid the alien woman carefully on the ground, near a stone wall. She breathed slowly, her chest rising and falling like a broken rhythm. He sat near the entrance, watching her. His name was not known to her, but to himself. He was Daniel, a wanderer, a traveler in lands where no man should walk alone. He had crossed deserts before, but never had he carried someone like her. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the shadows. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking at him. At first, fear filled her. She did not know if he was friend or enemy. She remembered her family's betrayal. Why would a stranger be different? Daniel reached into his pack again and pulled out dried bread. He broke it and placed it near her hand. She looked at it, confused. Food, but not her food. Still, hunger made her brave. She took a small piece, chewed slowly, and swallowed. Daniel smiled faintly. It was the first time he had smiled in days. Silence filled the cave, but it was not empty silence. Their eyes spoke. His said, "You are safe, for now." Hers said, "I want to believe you." After a moment, she raised her hand. Weak fingers drew shapes. On the dusty cave floor, circles, lines, strange symbols. Daniel leaned forward, watching carefully. She pointed at herself and made a sound. Broken, soft, but it was a word. Her name, perhaps. Then she pointed at him. Daniel touched his chest. "Daniel," he said slowly. She repeated it. "Da-Neil." Her voice was weak, but clear enough. He nodded. "Yes, Daniel." For the first time, she had a name to hold on to, a human name. The bond grew, but trust was fragile. She could not tell him her story yet. Her heart carried too much pain. Daniel also kept silent. He had his own secrets. A wanderer does not survive deserts without scars, but the desert was not sleeping outside. The night crawled with strange sounds. The wind whispered through rocks. Sand shifted, and far away, glowing eyes watched the cave. Creatures of the wasteland had caught their scent. Inside, the alien woman shivered. She felt the danger before he did. Her kind had senses sharper than humans. She raised her hand, pointing to the cave entrance. Her eyes widened in fear. Daniel listened. At first, nothing. Then, a faint scratch on stone. Another, closer. Something climbing the rocks. He stood, pulling a knife from his belt. It was small, but sharp. His heart beat faster. He was only one man against whatever hunted them. The woman tried to rise, but her body was too weak. She fell back, frustrated. She wanted to help, but she was helpless. She whispered something in her language, a prayer or a warning. The scratching grew louder. Shadows moved near the entrance. Then silence. Daniel held his breath. His hand tightened on the knife. Suddenly, a dark shape leaped inside. Not a man, not a bird. A desert beast, long-limbed with glowing red eyes and teeth sharp like glass. It hissed, its tongue flicking. The woman gasped. Daniel stepped forward, blocking its path. The beast lunged. Daniel dodged, his knife flashing in the dark. The blade cut, but only shallow. The creature screeched, angry, and slashed with claws. Daniel stumbled back, barely avoiding the strike. He gritted his teeth. This was no simple vulture. This was a predator, a killer. The alien woman gathered the last of her strength. She grabbed a stone and threw it. It hit the beast's side, not enough to wound, but enough to distract. Daniel seized the moment. He lunged forward, knife sinking deep into the creature's throat. It screamed, shook, and then fell silent. Blood darkened the cave floor. Breathing hard, Daniel pulled his knife free. His hands trembled, but his eyes stayed sharp. He turned to her. She was pale, her energy fading, but her eyes shone with something new respect. He sat near her again, cleaning the blade. "Safe," he whispered, though he knew it was only for now. She touched the ground again with her finger. This time she drew two figures, one tall, one small, standing side by side. She looked at him, her lips forming one broken word. Together, Daniel stared at the drawing, then at her. Slowly, he nodded. Together. Outside, the desert was still full of enemies. Shadows moved. The vultures had returned, and worse things would soon come. But inside that small cave, something had begun. A fragile trust. A promise, and in that moment, Daniel understood something deep inside. He had not just saved her. She had given him something too. A reason to fight. The night grew darker. Cave grew colder. But two strangers, one human and one alien, were no longer alone. The desert would test them. Death would chase them. But their story had only just started. A fragile bond. The desert night was cold. Wind whistled through the rocks, carrying whispers that seemed alive. Inside the cave, a small fire burned, its light dancing on the walls. Daniel sat near it, sharpening his knife with a stone. Across from him, the alien woman lay weak. But her eyes stayed open. The beast's body still lay at the entrance, silent and broken. The smell of blood was heavy, and Daniel knew it would call more hunters before dawn. He would need to move soon. But, for now, he watched her, and she watched him. She tried to sit up. Her body trembled, but she pushed herself against the stone wall. Daniel moved quickly to help her, but she raised a hand, refusing. She wanted to stand on her own. He understood and stepped back, letting her fight her weakness. Slowly, painfully, she sat upright. Her glowing eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw not just fear, but fire. Daniel tossed a piece of cloth toward her. It was rough and old, torn from his own pack. She caught it weakly and pulled it around her shoulders. The small act surprised her. He had nothing, yet he shared. Silence stretched again. The fire crackled, but their thoughts were louder. At last, she drew symbols again on the floor, but this time, not just lines. She drew her people-tall figures with glowing eyes like hers. Then, she drew herself standing apart, alone. Finally, she crossed a line through the family shapes, leaving only her dot. Daniel watched carefully. He understood. They abandoned her dot. Her hand trembled as she added vultures circling above. Then she tapped her chest with her fist, her eyes filling with shadows of pain. Daniel's heart grew heavy. He remembered being abandoned once, two left by comrades in a lost battle long ago. He felt the echo of her pain. Without words, he took his knife and drew in the dirt beside her symbols. He made the shape of a lone figure himself. Then he placed her small figure beside his. Her eyes widened. She looked at the drawing, then at him. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time, she did not feel cursed. She did not feel alone. The firelight made their shadows long on the walls, as if the cave itself was listening to their story. But outside, the night was restless. A howl echoed far away. Not a beast, not a vulture. Something else. Something smarter. The alien woman shivered. Her people had told stories of those creatures, hunters who never stopped until they tasted blood. She tried to warn him with broken words and hand signs. Daniel nodded. He understood enough. Danger was coming. He looked at her weak form. She could not walk far, but leaving her was not an option. He felt a strange duty inside him, stronger than reason. He barely knew her name, yet he knew he could not abandon her. He threw more wood on the fire, making it brighter. The flames lit the walls higher, revealing marks on the stone ancient carvings. The woman's eyes widened. Oh, she recognized them. They were the symbols of her ancestors, old warnings carved into desert caves. She rose again, her strength surprising him. She traced the carvings with her fingers, whispering words in her language. Then she turned to him, her face serious. She pointed to the fire, then to the marks, and finally to herself. Daniel frowned, trying to understand. Then it came to him. This cave was more than shelter. It was sacred, a place her people feared or respected. Maybe that was why she had been abandoned nearby. Left to die here as a curse. Her shoulders shook and she lowered her head. The shame was heavy on her. Daniel reached out slowly, not touching her, but close enough. She looked at his hand, then at his eyes. His gaze told her what words could not. I do not see a curse. I see a life worth saving. For the first time, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Fragile, small, but real. Then the sound of stones shifting outside. Daniel turned sharply. Shadows moved against the moonlight. Several figures, tall, armed. Not beasts, not vultures. Something worse, hunters. The woman gasped. She knew them. She had seen their armor before. Her family had left her here as prey for them. She shook her head violently, eyes wide with terror. Daniel tightened his grip on the knife. His fire had drawn them closer. He crouched low, signaling. Her too, stay silent. But her body betrayed her, her breathing too fast, her fear too loud. One of the hunters stopped at the entrance, sniffing the air. The cave grew still. The fragile bond they had formed was about to be tested by fire. Daniel moved closer to her, his back straight, his knife ready. He whispered one word, slow and steady, hoping she understood. Together, her eyes widened again. Weak or not, cursed or not, she nodded. The fire cracked louder. The hunter's shadows stretched longer, and in the silence between heartbeats, the fragile bond between a human and an alien became something stronger. Not just survival, not just trust, but the first spark of unity against the darkness. The truth revealed, the cave was no longer silent. Shadows moved outside, and the sound of footsteps echoed against the stone. The hunters were close. Their armor clinked softly, their voices low and sharp. Daniel pressed his back against the cave wall, his knife ready, but his heart steady. The alien woman trembled. Her glowing eyes darted between the entrance and Daniel. She knew these hunters. She knew why they had come. Daniel whispered, quiet. He pointed to the deeper shadows of the cave, urging her to stay hidden. But she shook her head slowly. Her fear was not of the hunters, alone it was of the truth. The firelight flickered on the carvings around them. Strange symbols, warnings from long ago. Daniel noticed her staring at them, her face pale, her lips pressed tight. He realized she knew what they meant. The footsteps outside stopped. Silence fell. Daniel held his breath. He could hear his own heartbeat. Then a voice spoke in a language he did not understand, harsh and commanding. The woman flinched. Daniel turned to her, his eyes asking questions she could no longer avoid. She lowered her head. Her hands trembled as she drew again on the dusty ground. Not simple shapes this time, but a story. She drew her family many figures, standing tall. She drew herself among them, smaller, her eyes brighter. Then she crossed a line through the family, leaving herself apart. Daniel frowned. He had seen this before, but now she added something new. She drew a dark circle over her chest. Then she drew fire around it. Her hand shook as she made the marks. Daniel stared, trying to understand. Slowly, it became clear. She was different, marked, cursed. Her family had abandoned her not out of cruelty, but fear. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked up at him. Her lips moved and broken words came out. "Curse me." She pointed to herself, then to the hunters outside. "They want me." Daniel's chest grew heavy. It made sense. The hunters weren't after him. They weren't after prey. They were after her. She had been left as a sacrifice. Her people had abandoned her as bait to satisfy these hunters. She covered her face with her hands, shame and sorrow overwhelming her. Her voice cracked in her own language, a whisper he could not understand. But the meaning was clear. I was never meant to survive. Daniel crouched before her. He reached out, not touching, but close. "Listen," he said softly. "Curse or not, I don't care." His voice was firm, steady. He touched his chest. "I choose." Then he pointed at her. "You." Her hands lowered slowly. Her glowing eyes searched his face, trying to see if he meant it. The firelight revealed no fear in him, only resolve. For the first time, she felt something she had never known. Someone who saw her not as a burden, not as prey, but as life. Outside, the hunters moved again. Stones cracked under their boots. One of them peered inside the cave. The glow of their red eyes cut through the shadows. Daniel stood tall, knife ready. He whispered only one word to her, the same word he had used before. Together. Her lips trembled. She nodded, though her body was weak. The first hunter stepped inside. His armor gleamed in the firelight, and his weapon shone like curved bone. He looked at Daniel, confused, then at the woman, and his lips curled into a cruel smile. The woman gasped. She knew him. He was the one who had led her family to abandon her. His presence was not chance, it was planned. Her voice broke into a cry. Daniel glanced at her, then back at the hunter. He didn't need to understand the words. He understood the pain. The hunter raised his weapon. Daniel stepped forward, blocking his path. But before the blade could fall, something strange happened. The carvings on the cave walls began to glow. Faint at first, then brighter. The alien woman froze, her eyes wide. She recognized the symbols. They were connected to her blood, her mark. The curse was not just a story. It was real. The fire roared higher without wood. Shadows twisted on. The walls, The hunter stepped back in fear, muttering something to his companions. The woman clutched her chest. Pain burned inside her, as if the mark she drew in the dirt was alive. Energy surged through her, wild and uncontrollable. Daniel stared at her. This was the truth. She was not weak. She was not prey. She was something else. Something powerful. Her family had not abandoned her because she was cursed. They had abandoned her because they feared what she could become. Her body shook, light pouring from her skin. The hunters backed away, their confidence breaking. Daniel moved closer, not with fear, but with calm. He put his hand near hers. "Contra. It," he whispered. "You're not alone." Her eyes locked with his. For a moment, the light steadied. The pain lessened. The energy calmed. The hunters outside hissed in anger. They had come for an easy kill, but what they saw was no victim. It was the beginning of something greater. The woman breathed hard, sweat on her silver skin, but her eyes were no longer filled with fear. They were filled with fire. She whispered one word back to him. Broken, soft, but powerful. Together. Daniel nodded. The truth was revealed. She was not abandoned because she was weak. She was abandoned because she was strong. Too strong. And now, with a human by her side, her curse was no longer a burden. It was a weapon. The hunters had not come for prey. They had walked into a storm. Danger. Arrives, the cave walls still glowed faintly with strange light, the carvings alive with power. The alien woman's chest rose and fell quickly. her silver skin trembling with the force inside her. Daniel stood beside her, knife in hand, his eyes locked on the shadows at the entrance. The hunters had seen enough to know she was not just prey. They whispered to each other in their harsh tongue, their voices like broken metal. Then, the leader barked a command. The sound echoed through the desert, and more figures appeared outside shadows, stepping from the rocks, one after another. Daniel counted. 3, no, 5, maybe more behind them. His hand tightened on the knife. He had fought men before. Beasts before, but never armored hunters with alien weapons. His heart beat fast, but his eyes stayed sharp. The woman's hands pressed against her chest. She whispered in her own language, words filled with fear and power. Her body glowed faintly, but the light flickered like a candle in the wind. She was not in control. Not yet. Daniel leaned close and whispered, "Stay behind me." His voice was calm, even when the fire inside the cave crackled louder. But the hunters did not wait. The first one stepped inside, weapon raised. His armor was dark, his mask covered his face, and his red eyes burned like fire. He swung his blade down fast. Daniel moved. His knife caught the strike, sparks flying as steel met alien metal. The force pushed him back against the wall. His arms shook with the impact, but he did not fall. He pushed forward, slashing at the hunter's side. The blade cut through the gap in the armor, drawing dark blood. The hunter hissed, stumbling back. Another hunter rushed in, then another. The cave exploded into chaos. Daniel fought hard, dodging and striking, his knife flashing in the firelight. He moved quick, his body remembering battles long past. But he was only one man. Every swing he blocked left him weaker. Every dodge closer to failure. The alien woman watched, her chest burning with guilt. She wanted to fight, but her body was weak, her power unstable. Her hands glowed faintly, light gathering but refusing. To stay steady. One hunter slipped past Daniel and reached for her. She gasped, pushing herself back against the stone wall. His blade rose then stopped. Her eyes flared bright blue. The cave shook as a blast of light erupted from her hands, throwing the hunter against the stone. His armor cracked, his body twisted, and he fell lifeless. Daniel froze for only a moment, staring in shock. She had great power, but she looked terrified of herself. The remaining hunters hesitated. Their eyes narrowed, their weapons lifted, but their steps slowed. They had expected prey, not a storm. The leader roared and charged forward. His blade aimed straight for Daniel's chest. Daniel barely blocked, but the force threw him to the ground. His knife skidded across the stone. He rolled aside just as the blade struck, carving deep into the floor. Sparks lit the cave like lightning. The leader raised his weapon again. Daniel's hands were empty. But before the strike could fall, the alien woman stood. Her legs shook, her body weak, but her eyes blazed. She raised her hands, light spilling from her palms. "Stop." She cried not in her own tongue, but in broken human words she had learned. The leader froze, stunned by her voice. The hunters hesitated again. Daniel scrambled to his feet, grabbing his knife. He moved beside her, his stance steady. The fire roared higher, and the carvings on the wall glowed brighter, as if the cave itself was alive. The leader snarled, lifting his blade. Once more, this time, she did not tremble. Her hands flared with light, and a shock wave blasted outward. The cave shook, dust falling from the ceiling. 2 hunters were thrown back, crashing against rocks. Their weapons clattered to the floor. Daniel seized the chance. He lunged forward, knife flashing, cutting across the leader's arm. Blood spilled, and the leader roared in rage. The hunters regrouped, circling them, weapons raised. Daniel breathed hard, sweat dripping, his body aching. The woman swayed, her glow dimming, the power draining her. But her eyes met his. For the first time, there was no shame, no fear-only determination. Daniel nodded. He understood. This fight was not his alone. Together, they stood in the center of the cave, back to back, human and alien, knife and light. Weak, but unbroken. The hunters hissed, preparing to strike again. Their leader growled, blood dripping from his wound. The fire roared like a beast. The desert outside seemed to hold its breath. Danger had arrived, and it would not leave until one side was broken. Escape and sacrifice. The cave was broken with light and shadow, dust still falling from the ceiling. The hunters circled, their eyes glowing red through masks, their weapons sharp with alien fire. Daniel stood ready, knife in hand, his chest rising and falling with every hard breath. Beside him, the alien woman's body glowed faintly, but her strength was fading. She had power, great power, but every time she used it, it drained her like a storm tearing at fragile walls. Her legs trembled, her breath came shallow. Still, she stood. She would not fall. The leader of the hunters growled, his wound bleeding, his fury stronger than his pain. He barked a command, and the hunters closed in again. Daniel knew they could not win here. He was only one man. She was weak, and the hunters were too many. His mind raced. He needed to get her out. Without warning, Daniel grabbed her hand. Her glowing fingers startled him, warm like fire. But he held tight. "Run," he whispered, though he knew she understood only the tone, not the word. He pulled her toward the back of the cave. The hunters lunged forward, weapons slashing, but Daniel moved fast. He threw a burning log from the fire at them, the flames exploding in sparks. The hunters staggered back, shielding their eyes. That single moment was enough. Daniel dragged her deeper into the cave. His knife cut through loose stone and vines until they found a narrow crack in the wall. Small, dangerous, but a way out. "Go," he urged. She hesitated, fear in her eyes, but his grip was firm. She squeezed through first, her body scraping against the jagged stone. Daniel followed, the rock tearing at his clothes. Behind them, the hunters shouted, their voices filled with rage. The crack opened into the desert night. Cold wind struck. Their faces, sharp and dry. Stars covered the sky, bright and endless. But there was no time to breathe. The hunters had seen their escape. Daniel pulled her forward, running across the sand. His boots sank into the soft ground, each step heavy, but he did not stop. She stumbled, nearly falling, but he caught her, carrying her weight when her legs failed. The desert stretched wide. Shadows of vultures circled above, their cries sharp and mocking. The hunters followed, their glowing eyes visible even from a distance. Daniel's chest burned, his muscles screaming, but he pushed forward. He knew they could not outrun the hunters forever. He needed to buy her time. At a jagged ridge of stone, he stopped. He pushed her behind a rock, his voice firm but gentle. "Stay." Her eyes widened. She shook her head, grabbing his arm, trying to pull him with her. Her voice cracked, broken words spilling out. "Together, Daniel. Together." His heart twisted. He wanted to stay, but he knew someone had to hold the line. The hunters came closer, their shadows stretching long across the sand. Daniel lifted his knife, standing tall against the ridge. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "If this is where I end, let it mean something." The woman's eyes filled with tears. Her hands glowed faintly, but her power was unstable. She wanted to fight, but her body betrayed her. She could only watch. The first hunter charged. Daniel met him with steel. There. Weapons clashed, sparks flying into the night. He cut low, stabbing deep into the creature's side. It fell, but more came. Blades slashed across his arm, blood running hot down his skin. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. He struck back, knife cutting through another throat. 2 hunters fell, but 3 remained, and the leader was still. Standing, his chest rose and fell, his vision blurred, but his legs held. He stood like a wall, a single man against the storm. The alien woman pressed her hand against her chest, pain and fury burning together. She had been abandoned before, left as prey, but not this time, not again. Not when someone stood for her. Her body shook, the light inside her growing wild. She screamed, the sound carrying across the desert. Her hands flared bright blue. The glow so fierce it blinded even the hunters. A blast of energy ripped across the sand. The ground cracked, rocks shattered, and 2 hunters were thrown into the air, their armor breaking apart. Daniel shielded his eyes, the light burning. When it faded, he saw her standing tall, her body glowing like a star. But she swayed, weak, ready to collapse. Daniel rushed forward, catching her before she fell. Blood dripped from his wounds, but his arms held her steady. The leader of the hunters, wounded but alive, hissed in rage. He stepped back, watching them, then barked a final command. The remaining hunters retreated into the shadows. The desert swallowed them, but their threat was not gone. Silence returned. Only the wind remained. Daniel lowered her gently to the ground. His arms trembled, his body bleeding, but his eyes stayed on her. She looked up at him, her lips parting. A single word left her, weak but full of meaning. Why? Daniel breathed hard, his voice low but steady. Because no one deserves to be left behind. Her glowing eyes filled with something new. Not just trust, not just gratitude, but a bond. Something her family never gave, something she thought she would never have again. She reached for his hand, gripping it tight, even as her strength faded. Daniel leaned back against the rock. Blood running down his side, the stars burning above. He did not know if he would live through the night. But in that moment, he knew he had given her something no curse could take away: hope. And for the first time since her family abandoned her, she whispered the word again, stronger this time. Together, the desert listened. The vultures circled. The hunters waited in the distance. But neither of them felt alone. Not anymore. The salvation the desert was silent after the battle. Only the wind moved, carrying dust across the empty land. Daniel sat against the ridge, his arm bleeding, his body heavy with exhaustion. Beside him, the alien woman lay weak, her glow faint but steady. They had survived the hunters for now. But the danger had not ended. In the distance, the leader of the hunters stood on a high rock, his red eyes glowing like fire. Around him, more figures appeared from the shadows. Dozens, they had not retreated. They had only called for reinforcements. Daniel saw them and knew the truth. They could not fight all of them. Not with his knife. Not with her broken strength. His chest tightened, but he pushed himself to his feet. The alien woman tried to rise, but her body trembled. Daniel touched her shoulder gently. "Stay," he whispered. His voice was weak, but steady. He was ready to stand alone if he had to. But she shook her head. Her glowing eyes locked on him, her lips forming a single word. Together, her voice was stronger now, not broken, not afraid. Daniel nodded. If this was their last stand, then they would face it side by side. The hunters advanced, their weapons raised, their steps shaking the sand. The leader barked a command, his voice echoing across the desert. The alien woman closed her eyes. She pressed her hand to her chest, where, The mark of her curse burned. The carvings she had seen in the sacred cave filled her mind. The truth her family had feared returned to her. She was not weak. She was not prey. She was power. Energy surged inside her, brighter than before. Her body shook, her skin glowing like silver fire. Daniel shielded his eyes, but did not step back. He stayed close, his hand on her arm, steadying her. The hunters paused, uneasy. The glow spread across the sand, lighting the desert like dawn. Her eyes opened, blazing blue. Her voice rang clear, strong in her own tongue, though Daniel did not understand the words. The desert understood. The vultures screamed and flew away. The sand itself trembled under her power. The leader roared and charged forward, his weapon raised high. His hunters followed, a wave of steel and shadow. But this time, she did not fall. She raised her hands, and a wall of light burst from the ground, splitting the desert like a storm. Hunters flew back, their armor shattering, their weapons breaking. In midair, the leader pushed forward, cutting through the light, but even he staggered, his body burning with its touch. Daniel rushed beside her, his knife flashing, striking down one hunter that slipped through. His movements were sharp, fierce, but this time he was not the center of the fight. He was the shield. She was the storm. The air burned with her power. Blasts of light cut through the night, carving fire into the sand. Hunters screamed. There, red eyes fading one by one. The desert shook with the sound of their fall. The leader reached her at last. His blade came down with fury, aimed for her heart. Daniel stepped in front of her. The blade struck his side, cutting deep. He gasped, blood spilling, but he did not fall. He held the leader's weapon with his bare hands, his knife striking hard into the enemy's chest. The leader roared, his armor cracking, his strength breaking. The alien woman's eyes filled with fire and tears. She touched Daniel's back, and the glow surged through him, not burning, but healing. For a moment, he felt the warmth of her power flow into him, closing his wound, giving him strength. Together, they pushed. Daniel's knife sank deeper, and her light exploded outward. The leader screamed as his body was consumed by fire and light. Then silence. His weapon fell. His body turned to ash, scattered by the desert wind. The remaining hunters froze. Without their leader, they had no will to fight. One by one, they turned and fled into the endless desert. Their shadows swallowed by the night. Silence returned. Daniel fell to one knee, his chest rising and falling, his body trembling. She knelt beside him, her glowing hands touching his wound, healing as much as she could. Her eyes filled with relief, but also with something deeper, something she had never felt before. He looked at her, blood still on his lips, but a faint smile breaking through. We made it. Her lips trembled. A single tear slid down her silver cheek. Together, she whispered again, stronger this time. The desert was no longer just a place of death. The vultures had flown away. The hunters were gone. The stars above shone brighter, as if watching their story. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. For the first time, she was not cursed. For the first time, she was not abandoned. She had been saved not by her family, not by her people, but by a human. And in saving her, he'd been saved too. As the night faded into dawn, their shadows stretched long across the sand. Human and alien, broken and whole, alone no more. The desert had tried to end them, but it had given birth to something greater, a bond that even the stars would remember.